Good evening, good evening, good evening. Who would never, ever, ever break their election promises, but will put you in jail to steal your ticket to Anfield at the drop of a hat? It's us, the American Scouser TV Thursday night podcast. ASTV if you're one of the cool kids. Joined by Brian right now. How are you, Brian?
Doing okay, I guess.
and just as if by magic, as if by electoral day magic, Trevor. Good evening, Trevor. How are you?
Oh, doing fantastic given the circumstances.
And good on you for getting in here right at the first hurdle. So let's just get on with what we're going to talk about tonight. We'll talk about the game against Bayer Leverkusen, as dominant, I think, a Champions League game as we've had in a while. We'll talk about Luis Diaz emerging. As much as we get the reputation for being the Darwin Núñez haters, let's throw Louis a little bit of love this week. And then we'll look forward to the game against Villa on Saturday at the highly unusual time of 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard. Alan says greetings from Houston. And there's a plant in the background just for Alan, but I'm pretty sure it's CGI'd. That's right, isn't it? It's CGI, Trevor. There you go. It even moves. That's some high quality artificial intelligence there. Let us look at the game. It was, a 4-0 comprehensive injury. The context of this game, Brian, highly unusual of having a brand new manager for Liverpool and then a touted manager for Liverpool before the brand new manager. Somebody who was, seen to be the natural logical step from Klopp, which we on this show pretty much didn't agree with, if I remember correctly. And we could see why. Bayer Leverkusen did some amazing things last season, but not having such a hot time of it this season. And there was absolutely no doubt in my mind, tell me if I'm wrong, that one team on that field looked like they knew what the plan was and knew what time of day it was. And it was the team from Liverpool.
Oh, absolutely. I can see right there. Leverkusen held on pretty well in the first half. I thought it was a pretty competitive match in the first on the onslaught, but the second half was just brutal. It was just a straight. If I want to note a British term, a German term, it was a blitzkrieg basically on the second half. And I don't think that that their side had any answers for us. But, I was very encouraging right there to see that. And it's also encouraging right there that our opponent lost the following day. So that makes life even better.
Trevor, the thing about the game was I think there may have been a little bit of nerves beforehand because, there was such a hype around Xabi Alonso becoming the next Liverpool manager, and there was so much hype around it that had it gone wrong, there may have been maybe the forced squeakings of, let's call it post-coital regret with Arne Slot. Just a few, because the internet is crazy. It's a crazy place, and people say stupid things. But we cannot be in any doubt that as much stick as we give FSG, and quite rightly in some instances, but in this particular case, they have hit that nail squarely on the head with Arne Slot, haven't they?
Yeah, and just from a Liverpool fan's perspective, seeing the adulation that Xabi Alonso was justly given when he came through, because he deserves his flowers for everything that he provided the club. No matter how, if he spurned us, whatever, that's I think that's irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. The due diligence and I think with everything that led them to appointing Arne Slot has just absolutely come up aces. And I think that game in itself was a real just showcase of the two styles going against each other and the Arnie's ultimately coming out on top. As Brian said, the first half had its moments where you felt that there was a bit of vulnerability, but the second half was just. I'm gonna use another word that starts with BL. It was a bloodletting. It was at a point where Leverkusen was just trying to go like, oh God, we have all these attacking options on the field. We just need to just somehow stop them from getting 9 on us, because there's just anything that we try to do offensively is getting countered, and we are getting absolutely destroyed. And yeah, it was a game that I think in the long run, especially with how the league phase is going to go, this is going to absolutely secure us the top 8 spot in the league for the champions. It sounds weird to say the league phase. I haven't found the way to make it roll off the tongue yet.
Well, I mean, like back in the old days, there was 2 group phases at one point, so we remember those at least. But here's what I want to ask you, Brian: if we make the whole relationship with Arne Slot into an analogy, that's very hard to say this time of night when you've worked since 5 this morning. As an analogy, we were entirely head over heels in love with Klopp, and then he dumped us, for want of a better term. And Arne Slot could be the rebound, or we could, grow to love Arne Slot. Right now, it seems to be we're kind of at the phase where we want to be in love with Arne Slot, but we're still at the kind of, sexy, saucy times, kind of. That's all that's on our mind right now. There isn't yet. There isn't yet the deep love for Arne Slot among the crowd. That
he has an unfortunate last name for that analogy.
He really does, yes. But we're sticking with it. We've started, so we'll finish. But the recognition of Xabi Alonso was a good example of what a personality at Liverpool can be if they treat the club respectfully, if they have some sort of success with the club, and if they fit the ethos of the club, which Xabi as a player did for a lot of his time, probably all of his time, with the exception of the muddied waters of whether Benitez wanted him or not, or was trying to swap him for Gareth Barry or not. There's always those stories with managers and players. But nonetheless, if you're Arne Slot, you're surely looking at the reception he got, Xabi Alonso, as an opposition manager, and think to yourself, I want some of that. I want to get that reception years from now when I come back with another team, which inevitably will happen. But we're not at that stage yet with Arne Slot, are we? We're in the deep like stage. It just seems like there needs to be one little hurdle to come over. Like making us a Sunday roast or something like that. You get your feet on the table and say, I don't want to go home tonight or ever.
Yeah, you better be good with the Yorkshire pudding. That's all I can say.
Yeah, sticking those Yorkshire puddings in. That's the key to it all. But we are in deep like with Arne Slot. But would I be right in saying right now we're just not in love with Arne Slot yet? Arne Slot, but it's coming. That's the very bad phrase for this analogy. But it's on its way.
This entire episode is just going to be named like
we're going to get banned from YouTube. We're getting banned just for this episode.
I hope the boss isn't watching us. That's all I can say. But I think we're, like you said, I think we're in that touchy-feely kind of phase right there. With that you haven't quite gone through an introduce Slot to your parents kind of thing right there. You're just kind of doing the hangout phase. Where you're just like you're going and doing things, and you're like, hey, let's go out here, the adventure stuff and all that. But you haven't gone to the full commitment right there, where you're like, hey, let's go up to and go and hang out with the parents and have dinner, introduce you to the and stuff like that. So I think we're getting to that point now with him. I think that he gives a sense of comfort to us that from the chaos that we had before. It's like a basically a calm after the storm kind of thing. Or like the eye of the hurricane kind of point where where it's always like nice and sunny and stuff like that. It's calm, and then like after you just went through like 150 mile per hour winds, which we did for a couple of years, and I think that I know us as older fans appreciate that, who saw before Klopp, who saw back with the other faces, who saw Benitez, who saw Jed, who saw managers like that who were tacticians and did things with a little bit different than just straight chaos and run at you and hope you surrender, which was kind of like the way Klopp's football was. So I think that the newer fans, the ones who came on with Klopp right there, are going to get used to this. And the more we pull out these 2-1 wins, 2-0 wins, but you just see it's like basically we're swamping the opposition side right there. We're stopping them right there. We're defending again. We're not just like going and saying, okay, we're going to score this many goals, and if you score this many goals, who cares because we scored this many goals kind of thing, which we saw right there with Brendan Rodgers for a little bit. We saw that definitely with Klopp for quite a few years of that. And I think that that once people grasp tactics and understand that, hey, you have to go out there and actually get things done, pass, kill, pass, kill, kind of like what we were doing now, and then just set up plays. I think that will be a perfect. I think that we still are missing some pieces to Slot's puzzle. And I think that once we get all those parts in play, I think this is going to look even better than what it is right now.
Trevor, just to kind of wrap up this entire FCC noted section of the podcast tonight. And not to be misogynistic at all, so I'll say that I'm getting this analogy from a friend in my job who said that she thought Cillian Murphy, the Irish actor, was eye-poppingly gorgeous. There are some people that were attracted to in life who are eye-poppingly gorgeous, and will give you the wild, sexy stank in whatever relationship you have with them. And then there are some that are classed as the girl or boy next door, who are maybe not eye-poppingly gorgeous, but are nonetheless incredibly attractive to us, and let's say homely of personality, somebody you can spend the rest of your life with. Klopp, to me, seems like the wild, sexy stank times. It was a maelstrom, and it was chaos, and it was wild, and it was crazy, and we loved every single second of it, but it was also occasionally exhausting. Arnie Slot is almost the coach next door, isn't he? That's going to sound really bad now. The coach next door that you want to have the relationship with. But essentially, in the analogy of a relationship, we may have had the fun, wild times with Klopp, but Arnie Slot we could settle down with, couldn't we?
Yeah. Klopp was the wild, like coyote ugly bartender that they were bringing in a ton of coin, but they were it was wild times. Whereas like Arnie Slot has a 401k, they have investment properties. They're on top of shit. They're fine. Yeah, it is a definite, not necessarily like a change in culture, because I think Arnie Slot, if anything else, has really taken to being a part of what Liverpool Football Club is being a community entity and something that really means a lot to a lot of people, and not just from it being just a sports club that people support, it being something that really lifts a lot of people up. And I think he's kind of latched onto that really quickly, and it's really refreshing. Not to say that any of the other people that were in the running wouldn't have been that, like, just to see him be that guy that kind of just gets it that quickly, the way that Klopp got it, and you just that almost transition of managerial responsibilities, you don't feel that there is that gulf between them to just kind of push the club forward. And in the end, I really just kind of want to put this whole segment to bed with the statement that Yeah, I think that Arne Slot is a guy that is going to be here for the long run. This is not a place where he is going to ever feel that he's out of place, if that makes any sense.
Well, it does make sense, but let's swiftly move on from the sexy times to the mental love now. Here's what I want to talk about. I just want to show the graphic there, Brian. This is where this was our average positions, our shape against Bayer Leverkusen, and the thing that stands out to me is the things that stand out to me. But the first thing is the organization of the back four. Quite conservative, more conservative than we would ever expect under Klopp. With the fullbacks be pushed up a lot higher there. The solidity of that double pivot, something we probably missed under Jurgen Klopp, was having two players that are doing the midfield holding job. The one, when we had Fabinho, it was obviously fantastic. But without Fabinho, it wasn't always as good. And then taking the risk of putting the three players up front. But the thing that stands out to me is what appears to be the freedom of Curtis Jones moving around there in midfield. This is what Arne Slot is bringing to us, isn't it? It's we're still having that courage to attack under Arne Slot, but we're also combining it with a defensive solidity and a defensive rigidity that's hard to break through. To the extent that I think Xabi Alonso said after the game that Liverpool are probably one of the most balanced teams in Europe.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, just looking at that graphic right there, if you see on there that with Gravenberch and Macka basically holding up that entire middle of the pitch, they basically stopped a lot of attacks, stopped the ball flowing through in that second half. I mean, they shut it down, and this not to I think we have a stiff competition for that leading attacker role now with what I saw with Luis Diaz right there where he was at. I know we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but I think that it kind of opens up a little thing of one of the conversations I had about that needing another number 9. I think that we've opened up another question. Now with Curtis Jones with the freedom, I still think that role right there is not suited so much for Szoboszlai because I think that he's more of a runner, more of a structured person that he has to make these runs. That role right there is basically a Harvey / Curtis type of role. And so I think that he has to go in there and basically where it's freedom to go in there to set up play, freedom to go in there to move, and freedom to make things happen. Szoboszlai doesn't do that. I mean, so I think that changes that entire thing. So I think, as I said earlier, I think that we still have missing pieces to this puzzle. And I think that once we are able to grasp a hold of a more midfield options, because I think that even though we have this, I think we're lacking midfield options right at the moment. Even when Harvey comes back, I still think that we still have problems right there. I mean, especially with that double pivot, I think that we still need to have one more player capable of playing that besides having Tyler Morton go out there and Endo being brought into the equation, because I don't think that either one really suit the system. Tyler Morton, I think, is still kind of small. Even if he's small compared to Galley, then he's kind of a small guy. So I mean, so I think that we still have to go in there and bring somebody into that picture right there. But I mean, it's so different right there looking at this system right there than looking at Klopp's system where we had runs from the left and the right with both Trent and Robbo bombing this into the opposition third. You don't see that as much anymore. I mean, you do see that Trent kind of creeps every once in a while into the center of midfield enough to make Tamushin start kind of cringing that he's going to become a midfielder. I mean, but when you see that right there, but Robbo right there, you see him make the runs, and I do think that Robbo has a better communication system. Even Simicast also has a better communication with Gapco than they do with Diaz, because I think that with Diaz right there, when you have Diaz and Nunez together, I think it's too much chaos, way too much running, too many things. You need to Szoboszlai into it. It's just a whole full. It's not no tactical issues going on. Everybody's just kind of like just running and running and running and running. Even though Nunez has got better over the past couple of weeks, but I think this right here is a perfect like setup right there if you think about it as far as our front three. And I mean, I think that going forward, that you may see a lot more of this kind of experiment that Slot had with this.
Just on that though, Brian, when Trent plays as the inverted fullback, his average position would tend to be closer to where Gravenberch is.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that his average position is out wide suggests that he's kind of getting the discipline of that position now, and that's a good thing for Trent, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that he's also, even listen to Trent's comments about Slot, that he's actually been talked to him and communicated with him. And, that whole, if you moved eight yards over this way, you'd have more coverage. I mean, those things right there are things going forward. I think that unfortunately, I think that that Trent Cantor got into the head that he was always going to be the attacker, and we always was going to rely on that right side center half to take up for him, or in that case having Fabinho come in there and drop back and take over for that position that he's in. I think that now with the way that Slot's thing is, you have to defend. I mean, you're a right back. That's your job, and so your job is to go back, bring the ball up, go to a certain degree, and then move back. In that. And so I think that you ended. Pardon me. You ended the entire tactics of Klopp's Gegenpressing right there, and his blitzkrieg type of thing that he does by coming there by putting control on your fullbacks, and it's a good thing to me. I think that we've now grasped what Trent can do if he's actually put into a spot and saying, hey, this is your job. I mean, I don't know if Trent likes that as much, but I mean, I guess we'll find out. But I mean, but I think that right now he understands his role, and he's actually defended a lot better this season.
Trevor, what I'll show here now is the superimposed Bayer Leverkusen lineup against ours. And some of that I think is a bit mixed up because of position changes by Bayer Leverkusen in the second half. But what it looks like is that the two men in midfield essentially marshaled the central midfield by themselves, but it also left Van Dijk almost like a sweeper, like a free man. Like, this setup is covering all the bases, and that's one of the principles of defending, is to make sure you have cover. If somebody's going to press, there has to be somebody behind them. And we seem to be positioning players under Slot where the width of the field is covered. Whereas we've always complained when Trent was doing the inverted fullback thing under Klopp that we were frequently exposed on his side. But now with that discipline, managers are now going to have to find a different solution to how to play against Liverpool, aren't they?
Yeah, it is a thing where, especially towards the end of Klopp's tenure, it became super predictable. There was no malleability or adaptability to how he attacked any given team. There was nothing that kind of worked on a case-by-case basis with him. It was, I have my guys that are going to do the thing that I want to do, and we'll put that up against anybody. And for a long period of time, that had a great ratio of success. But as time wore on and that mileage really built up on a lot of guys, it ran its course. And now I think, while and me personally thinks, and it may just be early on, that Slot is kind of falling into those same things where he has his 11 and he's going to run them out there and run them into the ground regardless of it. And it's going to take injuries to take guys out of the lineup rather than anything else. Get well soon, Diogo. But my biggest thing with how Slot has treated things is there's no and it feels harsh to say, there's no lack of accountability anymore. We're not waiting till the 85th minute every match for a sub for sub's sake. If he sees a problem, he's going to address it, and he has full faith in every single player that he has at his disposal to go in and address a certain problem. Yeah, early on we're like, oh man, he's never going to play Gomez. He's never going to do this thing. He's never going to give these guys opportunities. And granted, I think it has been a bit of the injuries and a bit of the schedule ramping up a bit. But now I think it's just as much that as it is now he has a complete grasp of the roster. He knows that on a given day that, all right, if you're playing a team that is going to play a certain way, you can go give Kwanzaa some minutes. You can go give Gomez some minutes. You can go give Costas some minutes. You can give Szoboszlai 60 minutes off from running around like an absolute fucking psychopath. It is something where I think there is eventually going to be that happy medium of we're going to see that rotation, and it's been forced thus far, but now I think he is going to just kind of see the light almost of like, oh wait, I got a lot of really talented guys here that I can kind of work into this, that I may have not had a full training camp preseason, whatever, with that. Now I'm pressing them into duty that they can give me what I'm asking for, and just it's going to make everybody's lives easier.
Trevor, let me ask you this though. Do you think it's possible that rather than Slot being pressed into making changes, that it's at this point he picked the players he picked consistently because he knew they could do the job, and now after observing the other players, now he knows that they understand what he wants from them, and he's more trusting of them rather than it being with Klopp, we always knew that it's basically you're going to run until we have to bring you to the horse's yard and shoot you, Thiago. Because you're just broken up all the time. But with Slot, do you think that maybe it's more that he just wanted to assess what everybody could do, and then like in the example of Kwanzaa, for example, he saw in 45 minutes Kwanzaa wasn't ready for what he wanted, so he hooked him, and then we didn't see Kwanzaa for a bit. But now he's slowly getting back into the rotation because maybe in training he's starting to get the message. That, and it's possibly that as he trusts the players more and more with his system, there's going to be a lot more rotation than we ever dreamed of under Klopp.
Yeah, I really think that he's a guy that is willing to give people chances that put in the work. And just from what I gather from how he speaks and how he addresses his tactics on television and how he talks about his players to both pundits and just into the void more than anything with his interviews and stuff. He's a guy that is willing to not burn bridges internally. He's a guy that it works more of not necessarily a meritocracy, but there is never a chance where unless you completely take yourself out of the running, that he is going to ostracize you. And as we said with Kwanzaa, it was a weird look, and it kind of caught a lot of us off guard with how he took him out of that Ipswich game. But it's kind of proven to be a thing where Konate, even this past weekend when he got hurt, we're like, oh god, same old Konate. Well, we're back to the good old sitcom of Konate shitting his pants fucking 10 games into the year, and then we have to scramble for it the entire time. It was precautionary. It's a word that feels completely alien from the Klopp era. It's like, wait, we're just going to take a guy off beforehand to make sure that he doesn't make things worse? What type of absolute Sanskrit are you speaking at this juncture? And he more than anything from Slot's tenure so far, it is something that the main enjoyment that I get from how he handles the team is he treats people like fucking adults. I'm telling you why I'm doing this, and I am expecting you as a professional footballer to either have the resiliency to come back from it or realize that you have to change your role and adapt to that. And I haven't seen a guy so far, other than Trent with his like little saga that he's going, that has gone like, oh, woe's me. I've fallen out of favor, because all those guys that are kind of on the fringe now are going to get those opportunities. And I think a lot of them are thriving in them. And that's only going to make the almighty quad challenge that more fruitful.
Let's move on to a man who deserves all of the plaudits he got last night. Luis Diaz. Look at his little face. Look at how happy he is there. It's a hat trick with Gakpo getting the fourth goal, but we are the boys who talk too much about Darwin Núñez. And my point always has been, especially for a man who doesn't eat his donuts when he said he will, is that your all-time record signing, who was also a number 9, should be getting shots on goal. It's one thing to not get the goals. We had that with Luis Suarez hitting the post 150 times the season before he became one of the top scorers in the league. As long as you're getting the shots and the chances, as Bob Paisley says, we can talk about the rest later. But when you're not even getting the shots, it's a problem. This lad, who is not a centre forward by trade, as far as I can see into his history, may have played there rotationally. He just went into the German champions, the undefeated German Bayer Leverkusen, and destroyed them from the forwards position, which kind of shows up Darwin Núñez a little bit in my book. But I don't want to talk about the Darwin Núñez side of it. I want to talk about the Luis Diaz side, because we're looking for the new Firmino all the time, because fans do that. They're always looking for the next, we'll look for the next Salah when he goes. We're always looking for the next
to the new or the
next icon.
Words.
Yeah, we're always looking for the carbon copy of the icon. Now, Luis Diaz doesn't play like Bobby Firmino, but he does have that cutesiness that Suarez and Firmino has, Brian, doesn't he? And that's something that you would wish that Darwin would have, but this guy has in bucket loads, and you want to see more from him now, don't you?
Absolutely. It's like same right there. It's like he has speed with him. That's a difference. That's a difference in what Bobby Firmino had. I mean, Bobby Firmino had that sleekness right there, that ability to go through and make these to make these unbelievable little moves, and plus also the backtracking that Firmino provided. But Diaz just runs at you, and I mean it's like it seemed like he was at home in that position right there, which goes back to what I was saying before about competition for that number 9 spot. I mean, at first I was saying with Jota constantly being in and out of the recovery room, like business as normal. I mean, I guess he kind of had to go take Thiago's area again, since Thiago's not here anymore. Sorry, I know that Anon will probably go there and pop in because I mentioned Thiago, but. I mean, it seems like
you didn't mention him 5 times.
That's true. It's like
Thiago and Darwin within like
and Szoboszlai. So
it's like the Beetlejuice for
it's like you have to have like the perfect key of having Szoboszlai, Darwin, and Thiago in the right order right there before, and then a non pops up. But anyway, I think that again, I was saying with Gapco going there being on that left hand side, I think that it freed up right there because it was a lot more of a communication that you had between the right back and Gapco that you don't really. I think that I've always said before that it seems like there's almost like a miss right there with Diaz right there with our left back. I mean, so like him and Ramo never really have communicated very well. They're making runs at the wrong times and a lot of issues, which forces Diaz to go there to just go about his business and go there and go to the touch line, go there and run in and then into the box and get a shot. But I think that right there with Diaz being in the center of the pitch and then not having a runner behind him, which we didn't have Szoboszlai in there, of having like a Curtis player there, Curtis kind of drew people in there by being in this free position, whereas Diaz was able to go there and get those go behind, get those gaps and get those shots in. But again, like we always say right there, if you're a forward, you need to go there and take shots. Diaz took shots, got a hat trick. So I mean, it's kind of yeah, exactly. I mean, right there. I mean, these are things that we've been wanting from a certain player that we weren't going to talk about right there. So and Diaz, who's not natural position, gave it to us.
I think the player you're thinking of is Narwin Dunez. That's his name, Narwin Dunez. Trevor, two things about Luis Diaz for this season as well as last night is, number one, he seems incredibly happy after all the speculation about going to Barcelona and all that, and then the drama with his dad, etc. But this season under Slot, he seems incredibly happy, and not that I don't think he had any sort of tempestuous relationship with Klopp, but as we discussed, Klopp had he had his ways, and he wasn't for change, and he was very straight down the line, and his ways usually work. So why should he? But under Slot, the players like Salah seems happy. Trent had his blowout for 5 minutes. He was put into timeout, and then he came back, and there's still speculation about Madrid, but he seems at least happy here, if not fully focused. Even Darwin seems happy, if entirely ineffective, but it's important to have happy players at your club. But if you're going to be a tactician, it's also important to have as many threats as possible on the field for the opposition to have to deal with. And in that sense, Arne Slot is doing a fantastic job with the attack, which we probably didn't think could be improved on under Klopp. But he's doing it, maybe not in the numbers, but certainly in the quality of the attack and how those players are interacting. Gakpo looks like a world beater. Gravenberch looks like, prime Fabinho almost sometimes. There's something going on with Arne Slot that is improving the quality of the players and the quality of the attack, that if you're facing us at any time soon, you're not going to know how to plan for us. I mean, that's going to be Arne Slot's strength, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely where, and especially with Diaz, it is something where I think there has just kind of been a line drawn in the sand with Slot, where he just goes, if you give me this, anything else that you do above that, I'm here for it. And we would have never, in any point under Klopp's tenure, seen Diaz going through the center the way that he did so frequently against Leverkusen. And it's something where Slot at some points was talking about how his second best striker was like Chiesa. And now like there has to be a lot coming through where now it's not necessarily.
I think if you actually listen carefully, the quote was the second best striker in the treatment room.
Chiesa, you mean?
Hey, I I compared him to crypto and got shit on. So I'm just going to leave that be in the ether, but whatever. It's I think more than anything, it is not necessarily like a plug and play, but Slot is a guy that kind of lets especially with the attack, because I think he is more like robust with the midfield and the defense. With the attack, it just goes, I'm going to have these three guys out there. How y'all work together is up to you. But if how y'all go about it doesn't work, I'm going to let you know. So the whole the Zoboslai false nine experiment kind of went So he's like, oh, well, I'm going to do a bit of rotation again. Gakpo likes to be out on the left. Mo is going to play until the sun dies. Let's give Diaz some run up the middle and see if it works. Because in the the pregame lineup, you're like, all right, yeah, Gakpo is the kind of like false nine, Bobby Light in the middle. But as the position chart shows, like Diaz was able to kind of just really terrorize, because we got kind of exposed by their fullbacks on a lot of occasions. But the way that the Diaz and Gakpo were, and Mo in a lot of instances was able to just kind of take that back three. They eventually had to fall into a back four just out of sheer necessity, and just rip them to shreds was beautiful, because it was something where it goes back to what I said before, that the malleability and the adaptability going, all right, we see that this team has this setup that can be exploited. And if we just kind of put a guy that is going to run and run and run at these guys who can't fucking move, it's a recipe for success if there's that end product. And that is why I'm most happy for Diaz, because we've seen at least over the past I'll put it at like 30 games, he has what I used to call Luis Mendoza syndrome from Mighty Ducks 2. He's a guy, he's fast as fuck, can get you to the end line, and then doesn't know how to score. But when he learned how to stop, go back and watch Mighty Ducks 2 if you have no idea what I'm referencing. It's a movie from a billion years ago, so if you're gonna yell spoilers into the void, shut up. But it is one of those things where I think Diaz in this game, he slowed the game down for himself. Where I think it was the second goal, where normally he would have just lashed at it, and he was able to just let it come to him and just be able to put it in appropriately. It's something that you just give us those options now. And maybe that's what you do for the Champions League. Maybe that's what you just do against lesser teams, and you give these guys chances to be that centerpiece of the attack. There's so much that you can dissect from it, but more than anything, he's giving these guys freedom to succeed, and as long as they keep doing so, I'm not going to question how he deploys them.
Brian, I just I had to look back because I couldn't remember which goal it was, but the first goal. See, that's why I had to look back at it. First goal, that lovely pass in and that blindside run. We've been screaming for about he who should not be named for making those kinds of runs. Last season, he was always offside for them. But this is what we're talking about, isn't it? This is it's such a natural thing for forwards to understand. Getting one side of the defender so that the ball can be collected on the opposite side, and then you get a goal. It's not a difficult concept. And for the fact that a left winger has figured that out in 45 minutes means that we probably need another Luis Diaz, really, don't we? We don't need Darwin Núñez to improve. We probably just need another Luis Diaz.
Well, anybody on Discord page right there also are on Friday morning will listen to Kazi, and you'll go there and understand what we say about Darwin Núñez. I mean, it's just sometimes you lack that football intelligence, and I think that in his case right there, not to knock him as a player right there, but he in this type of system, he's not going to thrive. I mean, has he improved? Absolutely. I think I think Slots worked a lot better with him, but this system is not meant for somebody for a front three to run around and to create, which was what Darwin was doing in Klopp's system. It's not the same thing. We need that number 9 to actually be able to have the intelligence to make smart runs, to go through, to be in the right positioning, not offside, and to shoot the ball. I mean, and Diaz did that in 45 minutes. He was in the right positioning. He came there. He timed his runs perfectly. He came there and put shots on target. I mean, that's all a forward's job really is right there for the most part. You're not a playmaker. I mean, in some systems you can be a playmaker in a front three if you're on a false 9 type of weird like system in the front, or front 5 if you bring that seem like that that people try to play with. I mean, but in the long run right there, your job right there is to go there is to put the ball in the back of the net, or put it at least on target. We haven't seen that from Núñez. I mean, it's been rare occasions I've seen him making world-class shots, but just the basics. I mean, I just want to see basic shots. I want to see basic stuff. I want to see like the basic things that we saw Robbie Fowler do, those type of things right there, where you just said, where it wasn't always like
this goal against Leipzig. We just want that. The simple shit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's all you need to do, and that's it. I mean, again, right there, I think he makes life difficult for himself, and I think that he tries way too hard to make that world-class, perfect setup, perfect goal, perfect things, and he winds up being offside trying to do it. I mean, that's what happens half the time. Or he's 5 steps away from the cross, or he does certain things, and it's like, and again, those are things you have to learn right there. But I mean, he's kind of running out of that time at the moment now. I mean, those are things that you learn as a young forward right there to how you're seeing. I mean, for instance, right there, look at Kieran Morrison right now with the U21s. The kid is killing it. I mean, the kid is going there as a natural forward. I mean, you see what he does. Núñez is doing the same thing, but again, I don't want to harp completely on him right there. But I think that again, like I said, I want to go back and eat crow for what I said a couple months ago, that I didn't think that Diaz was going to fit in the system. God, I'm so fucking wrong. I mean, I am so wrong, and I will come there and live up to being wrong with it. I think that Diaz basically can fit across that whole thing, because I think we could probably put Diaz on the right, we could put him on the left, and we could put him in the middle, and I think that he would do a job for us at the moment. And and he's enthusiastic about doing the job for us. He seems like he's enjoying his football. I mean, and what better thing can you have somebody up in the front than a player who's enjoying himself? And I mean, even with that same thing, he's got a good communication with Mo. I mean, he's got a good communication with Gapco. I mean, there's so many good things that could come out of having being able to move Diaz into certain spots. And it kind of like has a little bit of that type of feel back there, when we had the Mane, Salah, and Firmino type of feel, where they seemed like they were on par with each other. And that match at 45 minutes, they were on par with each other. They kind of like knew what each other was going to do and the runs. I mean, goes back to Mo's cross for Gapco's goal. I mean, that kind of stuff like that. Those are things that we saw years ago that were like, this is money. And, and we saw it gradually got away when Monty left. It moved away a lot. And then when Bobby moved away, it moved away even more. And I think we gained a lot of that stuff back right there with seeing what we saw in that 45 minutes. And I think that Klopp was tired at the end. And I think that he was just kind of, it's like, okay, you guys go do what you do kind of thing. And I think that's why we saw the product on the pitch become so sporadic, where like you would see one day, like be enthusiastic for the Man City matches, the matches with the top six, and then we go and play West Brom or we play somebody down to the bottom. And it was just a slugfest, and you're just like, this is just trash, But I think that Slot going through and actually giving these players encouragement, teaching them, and giving them a fresh look has changed the game.
Speaking of changing the game, let's change it to this one. We play Villa on the weekend. That was a nice segue there, Brian. And before we do, greetings to Blake Bushy. We didn't want to ignore you there. And Stuart Spencer for giving us our one Facebook like for tonight. Good to see Stuart again this week. Trevor, Villa against Liverpool. Villa, obviously, Unai Emery is probably Villa's version of Klopp in the sense that, Brendan Rodgers, for all his faults, certainly didn't fail as much as Steven Gerrard failed at Aston Villa. But there was a clear limitation what he was ever going to do for Liverpool, and it was time for a change. Maybe overdue for a change a little bit, but we got the manager we wanted, and the rest is history, as they say. For Villa, starved of success for so long, looking for somebody they can get behind. And Unai Emery has come in and with essentially the same squad has given Villa fans belief. Unfortunately, if you're not invested in the right areas, if you don't have the resources to invest in the right areas, all the coaching in the world will come up against the brick wall. And it seems like Villa may have hit theirs. As good a tactician as Emery is, and certainly I think that he gave us some problems with Klopp was the manager, Arne Slot's a different prospect. Are we catching Villa at the right time to be playing them right now?
Yeah, they just lost their first game in the Champions League. They got absolutely pasted by Tottenham. I think it is a point in Villa's season where they are going to kind of pick their battles. I don't think this is a game at the weekend, especially with it being the late start. We bitch a bunch about the early start, but the late start over there is sometimes just as shitty. But I do think it's a game where we can kind of impose our will, and there's a lot of cracks in their armor now, and it's not necessarily through injuries. It is, I think, from a lack of belief, where for as talented as Ollie Watkins is, he's not in a form where he was at certain points last year, where you're like, okay, when we need to get a goal, we can go get it. And as Cersei puts out, John Duran's fire has kind of been had that blanket thrown on it, where he was just, every time he came on as a substitute, he was scoring. And now anytime that he comes on and he doesn't get a pass within like the first fucking 4 minutes of him being on the field, he throws a hissy fit. And now you're kind of getting those that little bit of like dissension in the ranks. And I think Emery is talented enough, and I think he has a good enough grip on the club and the squad to right those wrongs in the long run. But in this little kind of 4 or 5 week hiccup that he's currently in, I think it's prime for Liverpool to take full advantage of it and go and beat them. Not necessarily handily, but put them away just comfortably.
There you go. I didn't forget to unmute myself this time. Brian, here's my question. We just talked about Diaz in the number 9 spot. Would you play him again there so soon after the Leverkusen game? I don't know whether we have a Champions League game after that. Is there a break after that?
International break.
International break. So we're not going to be running him into the ground necessarily. Does Darwin deserve another chance, or is this the front three with Jota injured and Chiesa injured and Darwin being Darwin? Do you think this is the front three we should be looking at now for the near future, at least, to maximize our points? Because we can get to Christmas around about the top spot. We're in pretty good shape for the second half.
I mean, in my opinion, yeah. I mean, I would go there and stick with what we have. I mean, I think that it proved that it worked, especially in that second half. And I think that with Villa has stretched too thin for competing on all the fronts that they're competing on. So I think that that's going to be the problem with them. I think that also they don't have the reinforcements like that on their bench right there to actually get them past games. I mean, you obviously saw right there against Spurs what happened with them. They just got basically just bombed. I mean, to say an understatement to it. I like Emery. I think that Emery's a solid manager. And he's a pretty good tactician with it. I think that he got a bad rap when he was at Arsenal. I think that he actually was I think that he rode the Arsene Wenger out kind of phase right there with the Arsenal fan TV kind of brought in. It's kind of trickled on to Emery on now to where we have Lego Head, which now they're having to say Lego Head out. So I mean, again, I think that I would. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, I would put Diaz right there in that same slot. I'd keep Gapco right where he's at. My problem right there is that I think we're just running Macka into the ground at the moment. And I know we don't really have that many options right there to do it, especially when playing with Villa, who are top side. But we need to go there and figure out some way to go there to get Macka some rest. I mean, because if not, he's basically going to be I think from traveling back to Argentina, competing with in CONMEBOL, and then coming back here, playing 90 minutes. I mean, he's played I think he played the full match, or he played like 80 some minutes in this last match. I mean, so the amount of time that he's getting on his legs is a lot at the moment, and I think that we need to come there and figure a way to put him out right there. So, I mean, I would definitely only person I would swap out right there would probably be Jones. I think that Szoboszlai is probably going to wind up playing that game because I think it says playing that game instead of him. But I think that Jones should come in and to relieve Macka sometime in like the 60th minute right there, just to give him the rest that he needs, because he's going to go off to Argentina, and so he needs to have some kind of thing. Or if not, we're going to be in a bad position for the next round where we have City and we have Real Madrid, City, and all these other fixtures that are just like going to be that are going to swamp us.
Trevor, would you keep Costas at left back over Robertson?
No. I'd give Robbo his spot back for this one, because if you're going to kind of make it a real work share, Robbo as the more talented of the two, even in the run of form that he is, you gotta give him a game like Villa. And if it's something where you have to go yank him at halftime, that's
we finished that section of the show already, Trevor.
I got 97% of those words out of my mouth, and I'm like, Well, we're getting a bit of a callback moment here right now, but yeah, if you have to substitute, using our normal vernacular, uh, uh, Rabo at halftime for Costas, I don't think it's going to be something where it puts him in bad stead, where he's going to feel slighted or anything. Yeah, I really I agree with Brian where you want to probably put in Soboslai for Jones, but you're not really making wholesale changes to anything. It is something where you got to kind of just put your best foot forward with Villa and make the adjustments with how the first half goes.
But let me throw this at you, Trevor. Robbo might be the more talented one, but Costas has just kept a clean sheet against Bayer Leverkusen in the Champions League. Does he get the stake of claim? If we're gonna have a meritocracy,
in a perfect world, in a meritocracy, yes, Costas should 100% keep his spot. But I think more than anything, Costas has kind of been the Champions League guy for what he did in the AC Milan game after the moment I got clipped saying I wanted to drown him, I guess. But there was it's I think that just may be the weird cup competition thing now, with it being the league phase with these extra games in the Champions League where you can go make it be a secondary guys competition. It feels so weird to say that, like, oh, Costas is only going to play in the Champions League, like treating it like the Moose Cup. It's just, it's weird, but it's almost as if he plays better in those European atmospheres, and just go let him cook in that front. And then if you have to end up extending him through the other competitions, go for it. But I'll still stay steadfast on, you at least have to give Bravo the start against Villa and make him lose that his spot league wise, rather than have Costas's Champions League form kind of take it away from him.
Brian, before we wrap it all up, and before we wrap it all up for everybody else, if you're a Fantasy League show fan, there will not be an episode this week. So when we wrap up, we all get to go beddy boys. But Brian, give me a score prediction and the impact player for this game against Villa.
3-1, and I'm going to say Diaz again. I think that Diaz is on a streak. It's a toss between Diaz and Gapco, because I think that Gapco right there is also on a rich vein of form. So one of those two players right there are going to be, but I'm going to give a 3-1 score.
Trevor, score prediction and impact player.
Slot special, 2-0, and I'm going to say Gravenberch gets one to cement himself as the impact player of the game, because Villa is a team that can really throw a whole bunch of spaghetti at the wall in the midfield. And if Gravenberch is able to kind of withstand all of that and then go get a goal, that's where my head is at with that. It's something where I really want to kind of just have him get that part of his game going, because he's been doing so much else this season. And from his previous stops, it's like, oh, well, he's a guy that is kind of that weird holding hybrid, but he goes and gets goals every once in a while. I kind of want this to be the game where he goes and gets one and just kind of propels himself towards like upwards of double digit. I'm not going to say he's going to get double digit goals, but I want him to kind of get in that mindset where he can go do that.
I'm going to go with a 3-0 win. I'm going to go with an impact player who's not going to have an impact over the whole game. I just want him to do this impact. Joe Gomez with a goal, finally.
Woo!
He's getting close.
Man, that was so close. So
yeah,
close.
He almost had one the other day.
I'm hoping that's what happens. He deserves one. So he says Salah gets a brace in the house. Liverpool reps still haven't spoken to him about a new contract before the international break. Probably true. That's probably the most accurate prediction we have. But for us, number one, thank you for joining us for the whole night. It was fun as always, and we appreciate all of the comments and the likes and the follows, and make sure that like this stink bug that is on my keyboard, that you were tapping gently on the keys for the likes and the follows and the subscribes, or smashing them, which I'm not going to do because it's a stink bug and I don't want to mess up my keyboard. To make sure you know all of the latest data and schedules, such as there's no EPL Fantasy Show. And then make sure you are watching tomorrow morning for the morning coffee show, and then keep an eye out for news of a pre and a post match for the game against Villa on Saturday at the very, very late time of 3 p.m. And join us on our Discord channel where the chaos reigns. And this guy has to move. Thank you very much. And on our Patreon where you can get all the extra goodies, etc. But for us here, for Brian, thank you for joining us. For Trevor, thank you for rushing in at the last second there to get in on time. We really appreciate it. And we will see everybody next Thursday, I would imagine. And we will have a debut for the Thursday night show for the new closing credits. So peace out. Have a good one. Enjoy the weekend. And let's hope Gomez gets that goal.